There is a moment in every man's life when the person he used to be shows up on the side of the road and asks him to remember something. You don't recognize the moment when it arrives. It looks like a woman in a wet coat kneeling behind a silver sedan on a Tuesday night. It looks like rain that won't stop, and taillights blurred to smears. It looks like the last errand you wanted to do at the end of a long, tired day. That's how it always looks. Because the past never announces itself. It just kneels quietly by the side of the road and waits to see if you'll stop. I stopped. I stopped because my Uncle Ray used to say the world doesn't get better because someone else does the right thing. I stopped because it was pouring. I stopped because I'd just come back from his funeral, and I didn't want to be alone in my truck with what he'd left me. I did not stop because I recognized her. My name is Danny Reeves. I'm 42 years old, and I run a small carpentry outfit out of a town called Hartsville, 3 hours north of Albany. I make furniture people don't need but keep for the rest of their lives. Chairs, trunks, wedding chests. I learned the craft from my Uncle Ray, who raised me after my father decided being a father was too much work. I've been divorced 8 years. Her name doesn't matter here. It ended the way most quiet marriages end. Two people slowly deciding they wanted different Sundays. No scandal, no third party. Just an afternoon in a lawyer's office and a check I still cache the memory of sometimes. Since then, I've kept my life small. My cabin, my dog Otis, a black lab who has decided he's the mayor of my 3 acres. My workshop, a bar in town where the same 4 men sit on the same 4 stools, and nobody asks me anything. That was fine. That worked. That was the shape of my life, until the morning I got the call about Uncle Ray. Heart attack. Fast, no warning. The way he would have wanted, my aunt said on the phone, which is the kind of thing people say when they need somewhere to put their grief. I drove to Albany for the funeral. I stood in the back of the church. I shook hands I didn't recognize. I ate a piece of ham somebody's aunt made, and I got in my truck and I drove home. The rain started around Kingston. Not a drizzle, a real rain, the kind that makes the highway hiss under your tires. My wipers were on high, and my defrost was on high, and I was leaning forward like a man about to fall asleep, which I might have been. That's when my headlights caught her. At first I thought it was a deer. Something low, near the back tire of a car, pulled onto the shoulder. Then the shape moved, straightened halfway up, and I saw the outline of a woman fighting with a tire iron in the rain. I slowed down. 3 cars flew past her at 70 miles an hour. Then a semi went by so fast it threw a wall of water that nearly knocked her over. Nobody was stopping. I'll be honest with you, I almost didn't stop either. I was wearing my only good suit. My knees hurt from standing at the funeral, and there is a voice in every man's head at 42 that says, "Someone else will handle it." I know you know the voice, but I heard Uncle Ray in my ear as clear as if he was in the passenger seat. He used to say, "Danny, the world doesn't get better because somebody else does the right thing. It gets better because you do." He said it every time we drove past a stranded car when I was a boy. He said it every time. I pulled the truck over, sat with my hand on the door for 3 seconds. Then I got out into the rain. She didn't hear me approach. The rain was too loud. I got within 10 feet before I called out, "Ma'am, do you need some help?" She jumped, spun on her knees. Tire iron raised halfway in her hand like a weapon, which I respected. I put my hands up, palms out. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I saw you out here and nobody was stopping." She lowered the iron slowly, sat back on her heels, looked up at me through the rain, and I got my first real look at her. She was maybe my age, dark hair pasted to her cheeks, dark eyes, a face that had been beautiful once, and had traded some of that beauty for something more interesting, the kind of face you can't stop looking at, because it's telling you 7 things at once. There was a small scar just above her left eyebrow. I noticed it because it was the only part of her the rain wasn't touching. "You'll ruin your suit," she said. I laughed. "First time all day. I've been to a funeral today, ma'am. The suit's already ruined." Something softened in her face at that. She stood up slowly, wiped her hands on her soaked coat. "I don't want to trouble you. You're not troubling me. You'd be troubling me if I drove past. My uncle would haunt me." She smiled. A small one. Just the corner of her mouth. And I felt something strange in my chest. A flicker. A recognition I couldn't name. I got to work on the tire. Whoever had put the lug nuts on last had used an impact wrench and cranked them to about 1,000 foot-pounds. I had to stand on the tire iron with my full body weight to break the first one loose. While I worked, she stood beside me, holding a small umbrella she'd pulled from her trunk. Not over herself. Over me, so I could see what I was doing. Every time I glanced up, she was watching my face. Not my hands, my face. "You from around here?" I asked, wrestling with the second nut. There was a long pause. "I used to be," she said quietly. Something in her voice made me stop. Tire iron in my hand. I looked up at her, kneeling in the rain in my only good suit. And I looked at her, really looked. And the small scar above her eyebrow did something to my memory. It shifted something. Like a word you can't quite recall. Like a dream that slips out of your hand the second you try to hold it. "Have we?" I started. But a semi came ripping past and threw up so much water we both had to turn away. When I turned back, she'd stepped closer. 2 feet from me now. And she'd lowered the umbrella. The rain hit both of us. Neither of us moved. "You don't remember me," she said. Not a question. A statement, soft, a little sad. "Do you?" Now, something dropped in my stomach. "I'm sorry. I feel like I should, but no. I'm sorry. I don't." She smiled at me. And I want to describe that smile carefully, because it wasn't a happy one. It was the smile of a person who had prepared herself for exactly that answer and had promised herself she wouldn't cry when she got it. "It's okay," she said. "It's been a long time." I stood up slowly. The tire iron hung heavy in my hand. My knees ached. My good suit was ruined. And this woman, this stranger who might not be a stranger, was standing 3 feet from me, looking like she'd been carrying something for 30 years, and had finally set it down. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, please. Who are you?" She pushed her wet hair back from her face, wiped a hand across her cheek that could have been rain, could have been something else. Then she said her name. "Sarah," she said. "Sarah Callahan." And I stopped breathing. "I want to tell you something about being 42 years old. When you've lived the life I've lived, one marriage that ended, one uncle who raised you and died, a lot of quiet Saturdays. You think you're done being surprised. You think all your big moments have already happened. You are wrong. You are so wrong, Sarah Callahan. I was 15 years old. She was 14. It was the summer of 1997, and my mother had sent me to spend 2 months on Uncle Ray's farm outside Hartsville, because she couldn't handle a teenage boy that summer. Sarah Callahan was the girl who lived on the next farm over. She had dark hair she wore in a long braid down her back. She had a scar above her left eyebrow from where she'd fallen out of a hayloft when she was 9. She rode a chestnut mare named Penny, and she could catch more fish in the creek behind Uncle Ray's barn than any grown man I ever met. I was in love with her from the second day. We spent that whole summer together, every day, sun up to sundown. We built a rope swing over the swimming hole. We snuck out at night and lay on our backs in the pasture and named every constellation we could find. On the last night before I had to go home, we sat on the roof of her father's barn, and she leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "Danny, promise me you'll come back next summer." I promised, but I didn't come back. My mother remarried a man in Ohio, and we moved before school started. I wrote Sarah 3 letters. She wrote me back once, and then, the way things happened before the internet, we just lost each other. She became a soft, warm ache I pulled out on hard nights and put away in the morning. I had not thought about Sarah Callahan in 20 years, and now she was standing 3 feet from me in the rain on Route 9. "Sarah," I said. My voice didn't sound like my voice. Is that really you?" She nodded, and now she was crying. She wasn't hiding it anymore. "I saw your truck on the highway an hour ago," she said. "I recognized the sticker on the back window, the one Uncle Ray always had. I've been driving behind you for 30 miles trying to work up the courage to flag you down. The tire? I pulled off on purpose, Danny. I let the air out myself." She laughed through the tears. I know how it sounds. I'm 41 years old and I sabotaged my own car so a man would stop and talk to me. I couldn't speak. I just stood in the rain and looked at her. I was going to say hi. That was the whole plan. Just, "Hi, Danny, I don't know if you remember me." That was it. But then you knelt down in the mud in your funeral suit and you didn't complain once. And you held the umbrella over me. And you laughed the way you used to laugh, and she stopped, took a shaky breath. I've been looking for you for a very long time, she said. We didn't stay on the highway. She followed my truck 6 miles up the road to a diner called Millie's that I'd been going to since I could drive. We slid into a booth in the back, both of us dripping onto the vinyl seats, and Millie herself brought us coffee without being asked, and pretended not to stare. Sarah told me the story slowly, in pieces. She'd waited for me the whole next summer, she said. She sat on that barn roof on my birthday and watched the sun come up alone. When she finally accepted I wasn't coming, she made her father drive her to the post office, and she mailed one more letter, the one that never came back, to the last address I'd sent her. That address was 3 moves out of date. She married a man named Robert when she was 24. He was kind. He was steady. He was not me. She said that last part looking into her coffee. I didn't know what to say back, so I didn't say anything. They had one son, Michael. He was 17 now, a junior in high school. Robert had died 5 years ago. Heart attack, no warning. She'd sold the house in Vermont and moved back near Hartsville 8 weeks ago to be near her mother, who was slipping into her 80s and needed someone. I've been driving past your uncle's old farm every week, she said. I heard he passed. I saw your truck parked out front last Tuesday. I almost knocked. Why didn't you? She looked up at me. Her eyes were dry now, steady. Because I was 14 years old the last time I saw you, Danny. And I've spent 27 years wondering who you turned into. And I was scared. Scared of what? Scared that you turned into someone I wouldn't remember. I looked down at my hands on the table. Contractor's hands now. Broken knuckles. A life that had turned out completely different from the one that 15-year-old boy on a barn roof had planned. And now? I asked. She reached across the table, put her hand on top of mine. Her fingers were cold from the rain. Now I'm looking at the same boy who held an umbrella over a stranger in the rain instead of himself. So no, you didn't turn into someone I wouldn't remember, Danny. You turned into exactly who I always thought you'd be. I couldn't look at her. I looked down at our hands. Sarah, I have to ask you something. Anything. Why now? Why did you come find me now? She was quiet for a long time. Long enough that I finally looked up. Because I promised you something on that barn roof, she said. And I never got to keep it. I stared at her. I don't remember what I promised. She smiled. That same sad smile. But softer now. You said, and I remember this exactly, Danny, because I wrote it down in a notebook when I got home that night, and I still have that notebook. You said, Sarah, if we're both still around when we're old, and neither of us is happy, I'll come find you and we'll be old together. I stared. I said that? You said that. I was 15. You were 15. That's the dumbest promise a 15-year-old boy has ever made. She laughed. A real one. The first one all night. And it was the same laugh I remembered from the swimming hole, from the pasture, from every good moment of that summer 27 years ago. Danny, she said, I'm 41. My husband is gone. My son is grown enough to hate me sometimes. My mother is fading, and I have spent every one of the last 5 years wondering what my life would have looked like if you'd come back that summer. She squeezed my hand. I'm not asking you to keep the promise, she said. I know we're not 15 anymore. I needed you to know I remembered, and I needed to see your face when I told you. I sat there for a long time. Millie came by and refilled our coffees without saying a word. Outside, the rain had finally started to let up. I could see stars through the window over Sarah's shoulder, the same stars we used to name together, still hanging where we left them. I thought about Uncle Ray, about the funeral I'd left 3 hours ago, about the empty house I was driving home to, about Otis waiting on the porch, about every single road my life had taken since I was 15, and how every single one of them had led me here, to this booth, to this diner, to this woman with rain in her hair and a promise in her hands. I turned my hand over, laced my fingers through hers. Sarah, I have a confession. She waited. I lied on the highway, when you asked me if I remembered you. Her eyes searched my face. I didn't remember your name. That's true. But the second I saw that scar above your eyebrow, the second I got close enough to see your eyes, I felt something I hadn't felt in 27 years. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't place it, but it was you. Some part of me remembered you before you said your name. She started to cry again, quietly. Not sad this time. Danny. I want to keep the promise, Sarah. She stopped breathing. I'm not asking you to marry me at a booth in a diner. I'm 42 years old, and I've made enough dumb decisions for one lifetime. But if you'll let me, I'd like to buy you breakfast in the morning, and lunch the day after that. And I'd like to walk out to that barn roof with you sometime this summer, and find out what 15-year-old Danny was actually trying to say to 15-year-old Sarah. She was smiling through the tears. Breakfast, she said. Breakfast. That's a start. That's a start. Outside, the rain stopped completely. We sat in that booth until 4 in the morning. We talked about everything. About her husband, about my divorce, about Uncle Ray and her father, about the summer of 1997, and every road we'd taken since. When Millie finally shooed us out with a wink and a fresh thermos of coffee for the road, we stood in the parking lot, and Sarah reached up and put her hand on my cheek. She didn't kiss me, not that night. She just held her hand there for a long moment, looked at me the way she'd looked at me on the barn roof 27 years ago, and said, "Drive safe, Danny Reeves." Then she got in her car, and she drove away. I stood in that parking lot and watched her taillights disappear. Then I got in my truck and drove home. Otis met me at the door with a stick in his mouth and a look on his face, like he wanted to know where I'd been all night. I sat on my porch until the sun came up, and I thought about how strange life is. 12 hours ago, I was standing at a graveside in Albany. Now I was sitting on my porch, remembering a girl I hadn't thought about since Clinton was president. Breakfast was Wednesday. She ordered pancakes. I ordered eggs. We didn't talk about the barn roof. We just talked. About her son. About Otis. About her mother's slow decline, and my carpentry business, and the way the light came through the diner windows at 7 in the morning. She kissed me first, that morning, in the parking lot before she got in her car. It wasn't a big kiss. It wasn't a hungry one. It was the kiss of a woman who had decided something, and wanted the man to know she'd decided it. Soft, quiet, sure. "I remember you now, Danny," she said, one hand still on my chest. "Every part of you." Lunch was Thursday. A picnic by the creek. Otis came. He decided within 4 minutes that Sarah was his mother now, and forgot who I was. The summer moved slowly, and then all at once. She came to the workshop on Saturday afternoons and drank iced tea, while I finished a wedding chest. I drove out to her mother's place on Sundays, and fixed the porch light and the leaking gutter, and the loose railing on the front steps. Her mother asked me on the third visit if I was the boy from the letters, and I didn't know what to say. Sarah walked in and rescued me. "Yes, Mom," she said. "It's him. It's the boy from the letters." Her mother started crying. So did I. Quietly. In the kitchen, where nobody could see. So did Sarah. Who could see? Uncle Ray's workshop had a key on a leather fob, with his initials burned into it. I'd been meaning to clean it out for weeks. In late July, I invited Sarah out there. Told her I wanted to show her something. It was the middle of the afternoon, and Otis followed us across the field, and the pasture smelled like clover and cut hay. I opened the workshop door. Inside, on the workbench, was the wedding chest I'd been building for a customer who didn't exist, a commission I'd invented 3 weeks earlier, so I'd have something to work on that felt like a promise. She looked at it, looked at me. "Danny, I know it's fast." "It's not fast. It's 27 years, actually, if you count it right." She laughed. Then she cried. Then she pressed her forehead to mine, and I put my hand on the back of her head, and I held her there in the workshop, where Uncle Ray had taught me to hold everything. We got married in October. On the barn roof, it was cold enough that we could see our breath. Her son stood beside us. Her mother sat in a chair we'd hauled up by rope. Otis wore a bow tie he tried to eat twice. Millie catered from the diner. The 4 men from my bar came. Nobody knew what to say, and everybody said too much. At the end, when it was quiet, Sarah leaned into me and whispered, "I remember you. I remember you too. There is one more thing I need to tell you, because the night we met on the highway, that first night, in the rain, I did not tell you everything that happened when I got back in my truck at 4 in the morning. I sat in the parking lot of Millie's for a long time, watched her taillights disappear, started my truck, looked at the passenger seat. There was a folded piece of paper there, old paper, yellow, worn at the edges. Somebody had put it there while we were in the diner. "Danny, if you ever get this, no matter how old we are, no matter what's happened, no matter who we've become, come find me. I'll be waiting." She had carried that letter in her purse for 27 years. She had written it when she was 14. She had mailed it once to an address 3 moves out of date, and when it came back to her 10 weeks later, she had folded it carefully and put it in the front pocket of every purse she'd owned for the next 27 years. Through her wedding, through her son's birth, through her husband's funeral, through the move back to Hartsville, she had carried a letter in her purse for 27 years, waiting for the right man to find it. The right man turned out to be me. I have that letter in a small wooden box on my dresser now. I made the box myself. It sits next to Uncle Ray's watch and the ring Sarah gave me on our wedding day. On hard mornings, when I miss my uncle, or when the past feels heavier than the present, I open the box, and I read the letter, and I remember. That's the word that matters here. Remember, because it turns out love is not about finding somebody new. Sometimes love is about walking through the rain and stopping for a stranger, and discovering that the stranger has been carrying a piece of you in her pocket since you were both children. Sometimes love is a promise a 15-year-old boy made on a barn roof that a 42-year-old man finally gets to keep. Sometimes love is just remembering. I remember her, she remembers me. And that, it turns out, is the whole thing. If this story reached something in you, if you've ever loved somebody quietly for years, without knowing how to say it, or if there's a person from your past you've never quite let go of, hit that subscribe button and tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and every once in a while, one of your stories becomes the next one I tell. Until then, keep an eye on the side of the road. You never know who's kneeling there in the rain, waiting for you to remember.